Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1398 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Thursday evening into Friday. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And I'm joined on today's podcast by my friend, Tyler Jones. He's a friend of the podcast, been on the show many times. As if you're a new listener, you may not know this, but if you're a recurring listener, you will know that Tyler and I have a lot of fun when we talk. We usually get going long. And this is actually going to be part one of two with me and Tyler. So part two should be available in your feed when you're done with part one. So stay tuned for that in particular. But we talk about all kinds of stuff on the show, the deadline coming up, the way the Hawks have been playing recently, Jalen Johnson and AJ Griffin and Trey Young and Dejounte Murray and John Collins and the bench and all that fun stuff. It's a smorgasbord to be sure and a fun conversation to be had. After no delay, we'll have the intro. I'll be back with my friend, Tyler Jones.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm joined now by my friend, occasional, maybe regular contributor to this podcast. I think by far the most requested guest that I have on the show. Tyler Jones is back. Hello, sir. Welcome back.
I've been unbanned, guys.
You were never banned. That's not true.
So glad,
never banned.
I said some mean things on Twitter about a certain family.
That is not what happened.
So I'm really glad to be back, though. It's great. The Hawks organization, great organization, first-rate organization. We love to see it here.
Yeah, it's been a nice, quiet month plus for the Hawks. Obviously, we have plenty to discuss on this show. We'll probably take some twists and turns along the way. I do want to at least start with the way they've been playing recently. The Hawks now, as we are talking on Thursday night into Friday, are 25-24. They're the 8th seed in the East. That's also, though, they're close. They're closer to 12 than 5. So they're, as you've been talking about a lot on Twitter, basically no teams are good this year in the league. Everybody's kind of around 500 in both conferences, and the Hawks are basically, with a loss, can go from like 8 to 12 in one day, or go from 8 to 6 in one day, kind of thing. It's been bouncing around a lot, and they had not been playing all that well until recently. Like if you go back a month to Christmas, let's say, they're 8-8 since then. That's not great.
8-8.
8-8's not
go.
Great. But
500.
If you want to frame it more positively, you could say they're 6-2 in the last 8 games. That's a pretty nice run. They won the 5 in a row, and then they lost 2 in a row, and then they won last night. A pretty good win, I thought, actually, against Oklahoma City. It wasn't a perfect game by any means, but a nice road win. And they've been scoring a lot better. They're actually top 5 in offense in the last 8 games. Making threes, Tyler, 42% from 3 in that stretch. But of course, to top it all off, they are still dead last in the league in attempts from 3, which is certainly on brand. I want to know what you've been seeing recently.
Baby.
I mean, it is the offense, although it has been working more, knock on wood. The offense has been better recently, but the process maybe not so much.
I mean, it helps when Dejounte Murray is taking threes and making them. Honestly, he's been making threes at a reasonable rate all year, even though he's shooting out of his mind currently. But he's been a better 3-point shooter than Trey Young, so it's that's been a boon. AJ's rounding into form. Jalen's playing well. John Collins actually making a 3-pointer now every game, basically, so that's good. Though it doesn't really change much of anything. Offensively, hard to argue with the results. I could wish that, they play with more force on offense, maybe involve the bigs more consistently so that it's easier for everybody. We get easier looks from the 3-point line. But, I can't complain too much. You putting up 130 basically every night. It's kind of hard to nitpick. It's good to see Trey Young these last 2 weeks or so, play the all-NBA player that, we all know he is. So I think that's probably been the biggest difference. Trey is playing a lot better. And it feels like he's more connected with his team, and he's just doing more. He's just doing more for what you need your best player to do. And so that's really, I feel like that's been the biggest difference during the stretch. Plus Dejounte not missing shots, like he just doesn't miss anymore. So, a couple weeks ago I was like, he needs to play like Lonzo Ball, and he's just like, I'm gonna be me, play like Dejounte Murray, made the All-Star team last year and shut this Tyler Jones guy. And I'm like, he got it. So I can't complain too much overall about the team. You just really wish it's tough. You watch how the Thunder play, and it's like, would it be that difficult to run a modern offense where everybody touches the ball consistently and everybody feels like they're involved in the team and everybody's having fun? No, sometimes the Hawks do that. Sometimes it's just Trey Young, Dejounte. It's our era, baby. It's 1-2. That's it. So, it's working now. It's working now, and they have been moving the ball a lot better recently. So that's been a boom. But you still wish, as a fan of the team, I really wish the Hawks would play with more consistent ball movement. Put it that way.
Yeah, I think that when they've been at their best, the ball is moving more, and it's not a coincidence. It's not always a 1-to-1. Like they can be great offensively without doing it. We've seen that at times recently too. Like when either Trae or Dejounte or both really have it going, they're capable of being good enough where they still can be awesome without moving the ball a ton. But I obviously tend to agree with you about the way the offense tends to not flow at times. And Murray, I said it, like I think Murray. I think he was yelling about you, like by name, actually, in recent days. Like, oh, that Tyler Jones guy, I'll show him Lonzo Ball. No, that didn't happen. But I think that he just made a bunch of jump shots for a while, which is like, I'm not trying to be like negative about it. He was probably due for some positive regression, and he decided to have a week where he just missed a shot. Yeah. And that happens, and it's good. You take advantage of that. And him trying to find his balance, like he's kind of fallen off a little bit the last couple of games. I thought he was pretty brutal, actually, most of the second half in Oklahoma City. And then he made 2 big plays at the end. He made the one big shot and then the block at the end, which is nice. But people were asking me today about like Trae and Dejounte and how they fit together. And like simply what it is like for the season is that they've been pretty good together, and they've been okay-ish when Trae plays without Dejounte. And when Dejounte plays without Trae, it's really bad. And it's still kind of a small sample size, and it's only a half season, and you're talking about like a segmented half of a season. But, part of the theory was, in doing the Murray trade, was bringing in this guy who could maybe boost your offense or kind of carry your offense when Trae's off the floor. And like, look, it's not all him. I want to be very clear about that. It's not all on Dejounte, but because of the way the Hawks built this team, you and I have been very repetitive about this, but it's still the case, and it really looms over everything that they need more depth. But Murray has not been capable of just being Trey Young, basically. When they ask him to carry that unit, he can't do it. And that's not his fault necessarily. It's just he's not good enough to do that. And the numbers when Trey's off the floor and Dejounte's on are really bad. Now, last night in Oklahoma City, it was one of those times when it actually didn't happen. So maybe there's a little bit of recency bias. I got to push back about this. I'm like, look, I'm not saying it's every single game, but the numbers are the numbers for the full season. Like they have a -10 net rating with Trae off the floor and Dejounte on the floor. Like that's the Rockets, basically. That's a terrible basketball team with Dejounte on and Trae off. Now, it's not anybody's fault. It's just the reality. So I wonder what you make of that, because, I saw at one point you kind of called for the end of the stagger. That's become a popular opinion recently.
I'm still calling.
Well, I wonder about that, just because I don't think it's necessarily about the stagger not working. I think it's also just like they have no offensive plan when Trae's off the floor still.
Well, that's the overall problem. They don't have an offensive structure. The offensive structure it's the same. It's the same problem. Nothing's actually changed. It's Trey Young's offense.
Yeah,
and then
with
when Trey Young's off the floor,
with more mismatch hunting, basically. Like Nate likes on certain nights, he's a big fan, and he'll say this, like it's not a secret. He will find a mismatch, and that's kind of his plan B when it's not like the primary stuff that Trey's offense working. But they don't have as many mismatch guys to hunt with this year. Like Gallo, for all of Gallo's weaknesses, was a regular part of that mismatch hunting, and he's not there anymore. Bogey can't move anymore.
But to be fair, it was also bad offense too. Like it was fadeaways from Gallinari. And I'm like, okay, it looks good when it goes in, but we're not getting to the free throw line. We're not generating open 3-pointers. Like,
well, that was the other thing about that. When I posted the numbers today, when Trae is off and Dejounte is on, they are first percentile in free throw attempt rate. So they just never, ever, ever get to the line without Trae. And Trae is the only guy on the team that gets to the line with any regularity at all.
You know who would help with that? If they let him touch the basketball and do stuff with it? Jalen Johnson.
I mean, like, I don't go as far as some fans. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll say this, because the Bulls game really sticks out to me. The fourth quarter, where they start the fourth quarter, and the Bulls did a really good job of just pressuring up on Dejounte Murray and Bogey from bringing the ball up the floor. So it was difficult for the Hawks to get into their sets. But meanwhile, Jalen Johnson's being guarded by DeMar DeRozan. And I'm like, just let Jalen run the offense. Like, he can do it. Just, and he's shown, like, it's been in spurts, but, like, he's shown real, like, to me, Jalen's at the point now where I'm like, I would like to see Jalen be more of a focal point on the team. Like, there was a possession even in the OKC game where AJ Griffin grabbed the rebound. He had Jalen streaking, but he just waited to get the ball to Dejounte, because that's how the team plays. Like, we play through our point guards exclusively. And I'm like, if you want to change, like, you have somebody like this mutant in Jalen Johnson who's able to do different things and doesn't have a position, even though he only gets to play one position for the Hawks for some reason. We'll set that aside. But, like, I'm like, if you want a guy who's able to get to the rim, play with physicality, force somebody to commit a foul just because of how big he is and how good his handle is for his size, like, I feel like Jalen is a good option just to take some pressure off Dejounte and Bogey, and get open 3-point looks. Like, you saw a little bit of that in the OKC game where he got AJ Griffin going a couple times, and he didn't do anything special. He made one dribble. He sucked in the help, and he passed it off to AJ for an open 3-pointer. It's like, let him do more of that. Like, we got this guy. Like, use him. Instead of just what the standard. Like, I'm done talking about the John Collins situation here in Atlanta. It's just like they have decided their course of action, and they did. And I'm like, they've just decided all their power forwards are just going to stand in the corner and be make or miss guys. And it's like, but like, even within the flow of their offense, I feel like especially when Trey's off the floor, like, that's a good opportunity to get Jalen a part of the offense and allow him to show off a little bit of his versatility as a basketball player.
The NFL playoffs are ongoing, and we are very excited about our new sportsbook partner for the Locked On Podcast Network, and that is the number one sportsbook in America. That is FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features to make sports betting fun and easy for you, and new customers can join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon, and FanDuel has all your favorite bets, from money lines to point spreads to totals, game props, player props, and much more. Plus, you combine your bets together for a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. Championship Sunday is coming up in the NFL with 2 games projected to be very, very close on Sunday between the Chiefs and the Bengals, as well as the Niners and Eagles. Plus, all the stuff with the Hawks that you are looking for, including Saturday's game against the Clippers. It's all there at FanDuel. You can do it all in an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Football fans, basketball fans, don't miss out on this offer from FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Yeah, they're different players, but the Collins-Jalen thing, not only positionally, but in the fact that they don't magnify their strengths. And like I said, like you said, we don't have to do the Collins thing again. We've done it every time we talk, basically. But with Jalen, I think smart Hawks fans that I've seen have talked about, Jalen, quote unquote, running the second unit. And I think that's a little bit further than I want to go. I think it's more about kind of what you said, in that it's not just treating Jalen like he can't do anything on offense. It's not that he has to have the ball in his hands all the time, but I mean, this is not I guess maybe it's future facing, and Nate famously doesn't do development, as he said. That was his quote.
Developing is over, Brad. So we're not going to see any progression.
So,
no
but even if you ignored that, which you shouldn't, even if you did, I think even right now, the best way to, if you're going to have to play Jalen, and I think they should and they do, is to use his skill set. And he's not like a primary creator. Like he's not going to run your system for you, but he can create. And he's more comfortable with the ball in his hands than all the bigs. Like he's much better than John. Like you and I love John Collins. Jalen is much better as a like initiator than John is, just naturally. He's had the ball in his hands his whole life. Like Jalen Johnson is comfortable like that.
For the forward size, for the forward size players, like he's the best on the team. Not named.
Oh,
like
yeah.
honestly,
I mean,
he might be like better than Hunter.
Yeah, Hunter's a better like. If you want a 15-footer, Hunter can get to it. But as far as like if you want someone to actually initiate offense for other people in addition to themselves, it's definitely a Jalen of guys who are taller than Bogey, basically, on the roster. And also while he's been shooting better from three recently, Jalen is not a proven spot-up shooter. So like you think Collins doesn't get guarded. Jalen really doesn't get guarded, like at all.
Teams
like,
they don't guard Jalen. Close out the Collins. Teams actually still close out the Collins.
Yeah.
Nobody
they don't guard Jalen.
Ignores Jalen.
He takes and look, I think eventually he's going to make enough of those. He'll start getting guarded more. I think recently he's been shooting pretty well on threes. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's stark that he does not get guarded out there. So if you're playing him, in particular with Capella, you have these two guys. One of them can't space, and the other one can a little bit, but doesn't get guarded. And that means the defense kind of just contracts around you. So one way to get around that is to have Jalen have the ball more, in particular with Dejounte. If you're going to play with Trae off the floor, I think the way to really operate, other than just having Dejounte run the same ISO / high screen and take 15 footers every possession, is like if Dejounte needs to play off, they run stuff through Bogey. That's okay too, but maybe just occasionally, run something through Jalen. Like have Jalen have the ball in his hands a little bit. It's not as easy as I'm making it sound, but it's also not as difficult as they make it look sometimes with the way that they use him. And he shouldn't have usage that's that small because. Long term, I know I said it, I just sort of ignore the long term, but big picture long term, you draft this guy last year. Yeah, it was the 20th pick, but everyone agreed he was a lottery talent. He falls to you. He never plays for a year. Now he's playing. And in 2 years, the path for Jalen Johnson to be a really good NBA starter involves him having the ball in his hands. He's never going to be a dynamic shooter. Like he's a skill set that's unique. And that's also why he maybe is kind of a tough fit some places. But I think for him to actually be what he could be, they got to give him reps with the ball. Like he's never going to be the primary guy, but he's not a pick and roll guy. He can do it, but he's not like John Collins where like, yeah, even when John's being underutilized, like we talked about a million times, he's still really good because he can shoot, he can roll to the rim, he can defend, and Jalen can do those things. But I think it's a lot harder for Jalen Johnson to become a really good player without those on-ball opportunities. He kind of has to do that some.
He's not a natural roller. Like he's not a natural big man. Like when I think early in the season they tried to run like the John Collins package, which is it's not a package, but like they ran some
as a role. I mean,
it's just not his. It's not his game. It's not.
Jalen. And I'm not trying to overstate it. Jalen was a top 3 recruit in that class, and Jalen, despite being 6'9", 6'10", was essentially playing point guard in high school. I don't know a lot of guys do that, but he was playing at the highest levels of like EYBL, all that stuff. Like he was a prospect that he was not. I mean, I don't like the term point forward. I don't think he's ever going to be a true point forward, but he played that way in high school, and even at Duke when he was still there, he had the ball in his hands a lot. Like he's not just a pick and roll guy, which is why it's kind of funny that he's played. I always make this kind of it's not even a joke. He's played more center professionally than small forward. Like he doesn't play anything but big spots in Atlanta, but he does have the ball in his. He's more comfortable with the ball in his hands than basically. I don't want to say every guy his size, but 95% of the guys his size, he has more comfort on the ball than those guys.
Yeah, so I mean, saying all that, so I have been impressed with his recent stretch. Granted, Nate sometimes decided not to play him because we're only going to play 8 guys. When Nate's 8 guys are healthy, those are the guys who play 35 plus minutes every game, back to back, 3 days and 4 days, 3 games and 4 nights or something like that. Like he's only playing 8 guys, so it's like it's tough for Jalen to get consistent minutes. But like,
and they also trust Aaron too. Yeah, no, I've really been it's tough because I don't want to. I'm in this spot always where I'm trying to give the rational side of things, where Hawks fans are really mad about Jalen not playing more, and I'm actually on their side. I think Jalen should play more. I also understand kind of what Nate is doing because I think he's feeling the pressure and feeling the heat. He's overplaying guys, and I get why. But I think there should be a dedicated spot for Jalen every night. And if he's terrible in the first half, you can bury him in the second half. If it's a close game, I have no problem with that at all. But having a whole first half basically this season and not playing Jalen Johnson, there's no reason for it. And I know Nate is probably above most coaches in the league focused on that night, but like he just needs to play. And I think recently there's only a couple games in the last like 6 weeks where he truly DNP'd. One of them was the Warriors game, and I know people were mad about that, but the Warriors are like the matchup in the league that is like most difficult to prepare for, and Nate doesn't trust Jalen yet on that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that's right. I'm saying that's one that I at least kind of understand. The other one was the Heat game, and he played 8 guys in that game. So literally 8 guys. So it was like,
and the Heat, the Heat game, it was national TV, so I guess Jalen hadn't earned his stripes.
It's MLK Day. They were trying to get the win in front of the home fans. I get all that, but no, I think that he should play, and like he's still a work in progress. Like I don't think that suddenly Jalen is proven. That's the other step of this where there's a whole discussion we could have or not have about like the future if they move John. We'll save that for later, I guess. But like I don't think that you can just assume Jalen Johnson is your for the future yet. But I think he definitely could be. Like he's a really good player. He's got a lot more to prove, and I kind of just wish they would let him do a little bit more because he's not going to ever be, to bring it full circle, like the guy that you can like put in a little box. He's a 6'9", 6'10" guy who isn't going to be a great shooter and like has to kind of have the ball and isn't going to be this like dominant player in any one area. But he does a lot of things well, and he's really skilled. So it's not an easy evaluation. It's kind of the same thing, kind of different than the problems that I think this very traditional old school coaching staff have with the point guards.
This is the issue. Like Jalen doesn't fit it's not that he doesn't fit, but like Nate does not play through bigs. Like Glenn Willis, formerly of ATL in 29. Hopefully they're still doing something, but
I think they're going to keep going. And by the way, I should say this now. I hate that. So I know I kind of work still for Vox, so I'm not going to go crazy. But
no, I wasn't. Oh.
No. I'm going to say if you don't know this by now, Glenn and Kevin, who we love, even though I'm a rival of Kevin's on paper, we're actually friends, and that podcast got nixed by Vox, which I hate. They have said they're going to keep going. I hope they do. So I just want to say that now. I want to say that now while Tyler's talking about Glenn, because he's been on the show many times. So is Kevin. Those guys do a great show. And if they're still doing it, you should be following them. There's plenty of room for both podcasts. Those guys are awesome. There you go.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, Glenn had made the point on one of their recent podcasts that, Nate he's a traditional coach, like play through your guards, play to limit your turnovers. And
he was a guard in the NBA. He was a guard.
I know. And that's why Trae liked him. Well, liked him past tense, but it's just one of those things where it's like, to me, you got these multi-talented big men in Okongwu, Jalen, even John a little bit. You got to play through them in order to maximize their talent and their value. Like this is the game today. Like the Hawks, like it's just an inefficiency of theirs where they're leaving good stuff on the table. Like they're just not eating it. Like it's free food. I mean, they should be looking for Jalen every time they grab a defensive rebound and he's streaking up the floor and the defense isn't set. Throw him the basketball.
I mean, that is literally
that's an advantage. Like
I would argue that's probably Jalen's single best skill right now today is his transition offense, because he is a monster. Like end to end,
it needs to be a priority. I get the rebound. The first player I'm looking for is Jalen Johnson, because that's an easy 2 points
that's right.
and one opportunity. Like, and that's ways to buy time while Trey Young's off the bench to get efficient offense. Like they don't have to wait for Dejounte Murray or wait for Trey Young when you got somebody like Jalen on the floor. So that's just something. I mean, to me, I'm like, or if you want to cut the stagger, which I still think they should, because a negative 10 without Trae on the floor, like that's so bad. You got to try something else. Like
it is like, bad. I get why they don't, only because if you're not staggering them, you're going to have, let's say, even with Nate pushing hard, you're going to have 10 minutes a game where you don't have a lead creator on the floor. And because I know Aaron Holiday is 5'10". Aaron Holiday is, I think this is, I'm going to give Kevin credit for this, but Aaron Holiday is a 5'10" 3-and-D wing. That's what Aaron Holiday is. He can't create anything. And Bogey has been a good secondary ball handler in the past. He has a lot less juice than he's had in the past. That's pretty clear. So, like, you don't have a guy to run your offense. And now Jalen can do a little bit of that, as we just talked about. But that's my argument against it. If you were going to make one, would be, I know that's bad. I know -10 is bad, and they're like, I don't think like very bad offensively and all that stuff. I think it probably could be worse. We've seen them be worse than that actually with Trae. Just because if you think about it practically, at least recently, I think, and maybe this has helped the stats. And I should look at this up in the more recent times. I think what you probably need to do before you just get rid of the stagger is to just like intentionally for a while give Dejounte, Bogey, and AJ and Jalen, and try to like play more egalitarian, like not have Dejounte just do Dejounte. But I think that honestly, I don't know if this was Nate or just the way he thought, coming in with a trade or whatever, it feels like he thinks he has to do it on his own when Trae's off the court. He plays that way. It's like the light comes on and he's like, oh, I'm back in San Antonio. I'm going to cook again. And I get it. Like, look, he's trying to be a max player in a year, and the numbers and all that stuff, like it's part of the reality, but he's just, he's a really good player. I'm not saying otherwise. He's not good enough to just do it on his own. And sometimes he tries to do it on his own, and it's obviously not producing the results they want. So I think just putting it's not going to fix it, but if they give AJ a little more and they give Jalen a little more and have Bogey out there for the spacing, you at least have more of a chance. It's just that I haven't seen that happen very much.
Yeah, it's just to me, like the biggest thing is that Dejounte is not the organizer that Trey Young is on offense, and so like that's really because it's not a talent thing. Like I think these lineups with Dejounte plus whoever should work based on the talent they have on the team. It's just because they play such
boring. Straight ahead.
Straight ahead. Trey Young does everything high usage style. It's hard to break away from that when he's off the floor. Like
this is like it's gonna sound funny, but I actually think that Dejounte and the way that it's not work when Trey's off the court, it's frustrating, and we've just said that. I think honestly, it's kind of a reminder, at least it should be, of how good Trey is. Honestly,
well, yeah,
because and look. Trey has his weaknesses, and I think everyone should acknowledge that. But, like, if you watch this team every night, this year in particular, this is a different rabbit hole that we don't have to go down, but Hawks fans, not everybody, but I don't know about you, I've seen a lot more negativity about Trey this year than ever before.
Why would that be?
Well, number one, he's not playing as well. But even with him not playing that well, that's him not playing that well for him. Like, the fact that basically – every time he's on the court, even in a season where he's not playing that well, which we agree, he's still an offense to himself. The Hawks are still good on offense when he's on the floor, almost regardless of what's happening around him, because he is ridiculous. And it's not like I'm the biggest Trey Young stan in the world. It's just a reminder that, like, the Hawks make the difficulty really, really high. Like, that's part of the reason why Dejounte is struggling. But because Trey is so freaking good, he can overcome it. Whereas, like, you can't expect Dejounte to overcome it because he's not that good. And he's a really good player, but he's not Trey. And they should press more easy buttons. That's for sure. Like, that's more of a football term in some ways. But, like, the Hawks just don't do a lot to make it easy on their guys. And that's a Nate problem. And that's going back to when they promoted Nate. I was kind of the one flashing the light. Like, Nate McMillan's the same guy he's always been. And that's his weakness. Like, of all the things that you could say about Nate, his number one drawback, dating back to Indiana, dating back to Seattle, was that offensively he doesn't run, like he's not a creative mind. And that I talk about it all the time, and I probably could do even more about it, but it just becomes a repetitive topic. But we just know that is a drawback to this staff, and that's here we are.
I mean, and like I don't want to belabor that point because that's it's the obvious point. It's like
that's why I don't say it every single show, but it's like.
But I mean, that's
remind everybody. That's what it is.
That is the reality. It's just like I mean, that's the thing. Even though defenses statistically are down, like defensive schemes are so much better than at any point, just because of how good every offensive player is. So, like, if you're not taking the easy stuff, like you just make you shrink your margins. You shrink your margins, and it's why like to me, it's a big reason why they struggle when Capella's off the floor. I mean, Capella's not available because he's not grabbing offensive rebounds, and the defensive rebounds become an issue. So we're losing that possession battle. And then the other thing is that Capella's really good defensively. Like he's one of the best defenders in the NBA, and it's just really hard to replace that when it's going from Capella to Frank Kaminsky.
Or even Collingwood, who we both like. But Collingwood is just a very different player than Capella. They're just very different. Very, very different players.
Yeah. And I don't know. So they got, I mean, the Hawks are kind of in a crossroads with a lot of things. Like they got some decisions to make. And
we'll get to that in a second, I promise you. But anyway, no, it's we both wish they were a little bit more creative. And that is part of the thing with Trae and Dejounte. It's part of the thing with Jalen. We should at least mention, in an effort to be kind of positive, AJ Griffin, who's playing really well. Ooh. And AJ Griffin is a rookie who's 19. And I will say I've seen some pretty funny takes about AJ Griffin on the positive side. Like you would think he's already a multi-time All-NBA player on some of these tweets, but also he's really good, man. Like he just makes every shot. It's insane. He's 19 years old. And in the future, if let's just say, for an example, I've said that I don't think Nate will be back next year. Just put it out there. Let's say if he was, we're going to have that same conversation about AJ again, about the lack of innovation, because right now AJ's usage rate is really low, and AJ's assist rate is like very, very, very small, and like he's basically only a shooter scorer right now. He does nothing else.
I mean, it's the defined.
That's the role he's in. That's the role he's in. No, it's not his fault.
Tough watching. It's really tough watching AJ Griffin because every once in a while he'll just do a move, and it's like, he could probably run an offense for a bit, like with his handle and his size, and like That's the hope in the.
I think the hope in the future, realistically, on AJ Griffin, is that he's not. I don't think he's going to be a number one scorer, creator, but I think he could be your number two, which means and your number two has to be able to create for others. And right now, that's what he's not doing. But I think it's more about him not being asked to do that. They basically have put him in this. I think it was my friend Andrew Kelly said this to me offline. So I think it's basically like they've said, all right, AJ, go out there. You have a green light to shoot, but we don't want you to turn the ball over. We just want you to either shoot or swing it.
Yeah.
It's like we don't want you to cook. We just want you to be 19 and go out there and shoot. And it's honestly, this is going to sound hilarious. I think that was the only realistic way Nate was going to play him, which is crazy because, like, obviously he should be playing. We all agree he has been playing. AJ's played in 40 straight games. I would have lost that bet, Tyler. If you asked me preseason, is AJ going to play in 40 straight games? I'd have been like, no chance.
I would have won it. I would have won the bet.
I would have lost. So that's me. I would have lost. But Nate famously doesn't love young guys. So I think the compromise was basically them telling AJ, look, we want you to shoot whatever you want, but that's all we want you to do in offense is shoot. And that's kind of what's happened so far.
Well, it's no developing. So
full circle on that. But no, I mean, I think that the future of those two guys, like, I'm not saying that AJ and Jalen are going to be the next wave of the Hawks. Like, I think AJ is probably going to be part of that. But that's an encouraging thing that, like, it's hard to talk about a ton right now because the Hawks are in the middle of kind of a win now-ish mode and they're 500 and there's frustration. But, like, it seems like, honestly, beyond seems like they nailed the AJ pick. And I think Jalen's shown enough to where you've got to be pretty encouraged about him so far too. So, like, that's two young guys in the pipeline. Because of the artificial constraint of the luxury tax, it's important to have two guys making very little money who are good. That's very helpful. So anyway, that's positive segment there.
Yeah, I mean, it's also kind of hard to say anything about AJ because he's just like good, and that's kind of he's 19 and he's really good at everything that he's allowed to do on the floor.
He's a pro too already. He's a pro.
He's a pro.
He's 19, and that's I don't want to over attribute it to him being a son of an NBA player, but this is a son of an NBA player who like he plays like a guy who knows how to play already, and he's 19, and like not only the makeup and the way he operates, but even the body, like there is no chance you would know he was 19 if you didn't know. You know what I mean? If you're just watching that guy on the court, a combination of the way he looks, the way that he's already thick and strong, the way he makes the right decisions most of the time, like he plays like not like a 30-year-old, but he's not a 19-year-old on the court in really any way other than just knowing how old he is.
Yep, and loves vanilla wafers off the court apparently. Which
he got flamed. Our guy John Collins was flaming AJ about that too. If you missed that, AJ basically.
I saw it.
I'm saying for the listener. Well, you can tee it up, but like AJ gave one of those like Jumbotron interviews or something. You know, it was one of those things about like, was it favorite snack? Was that the phrase?
Yeah, favorite snack. It was something like it was something. I just know he answered favorite snack as vanilla wafers. And
like everyone on the team was killing him, but John like did it in front of the media. Like John was like roasting him to reporters about AJ, and I think
he threw it. Jamila Johnson.
Jamila Johnson, yeah,
Jamila.
Shout out to Jamila. She does a great job.
She tweeted that John, after he gave that answer, John threw a towel at him. Like during the game.
And he's a rookie, and they roast him, and like everybody. I will say, like we never, even as I'm around the team a lot. You never know these guys. Everybody loves AJ. Everybody. And like he gets kind of poked fun about for like, you know, AJ gospel and like all that stuff. But like everybody that I've come into contact with loves AJ. And that's not how it is for every player. I'm not saying anybody's a bad guy, but like AJ so far in my experience has a 100%.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Time out, Brad. You mean there are players
in the NBA?
Other guys maybe don't like that much?
In the NBA,
there are guys in the NBA, of course.
With sub 100% approval ratings, yeah, that's the case. But no, I mean, even like support staff, like everybody loves AJ, and I'm sure it's, you know, he knows he's a rookie and he's got his head down, and he's doing the rookie stuff, and he's getting Chick-fil-A for guys and doing all that stuff. But like, anyway, AJ's been awesome, so that's a huge bright spot. Like every time I get asked, like on a radio hit or something like that, what's the number one bright spot of the season? It's probably AJ. I mean, isn't it? I mean, I can't think of anything else. I mean, there are other options, I guess, but like as far as like, especially if it's future facing, it's definitely AJ. If it's present, maybe you can find something else. But like the fact that he's been a real rotation player at 19 on a team that's trying to win under Nate McMillan, under Nate McMillan. What are the odds of that? All right, that's it for part one of a two-part conversation with my friend Tyler Jones, and I will have much more. And again, as a reminder, part two should be in your feeds right now. So please subscribe to this podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, all those fun places. And again, part two should be available right now. Thanks for listening to the podcast, everybody. And we'll see you all next time.